December 21st, 1899, Volume 3. Luisa speaks about virginity and purity. After a long silence this morning, my lovable Jesus interrupted it, saying to me, "I am the receptacle of pure souls." And in these words of his I received intellectual light, which made me comprehend many things about purity, but I can repeat little or nothing with words of that which I feel in my intellect. However, most honorable Lady Obedience wants me to write something, even nonsense, and to make her content, I will speak my nonsense about purity. It seemed to me that purity is the noblest gem that the soul can possess. The soul who possesses purity is invested with candid light in such a way that the blessed God, in looking at her, finds his very image. He feels drawn to love her, so much so that he reaches the point of becoming enamored with her, and he is taken by so much love that he gives her his most pure heart as dwelling, because only that which is pure and most clean enters into God. Nothing stained can enter that most pure bosom. The soul who possesses purity maintains within herself her original splendor which God gave her in creating her. Nothing is disfigured or disennobled in her. Rather like a queen aspiring to her wedding with the celestial king, she preserves her nobility until this noble flower is transplanted into the celestial gardens. Oh, how this virginal flower is fragrant of a distinct odor! It always rises above all other flowers, and even above the very angels. How it stands out with varied beauty! So all are taken by esteem and love, and give it free step to let it reach its divine spouse, in such a way that the first place around our Lord belongs to these noble flowers. And our Lord greatly delights in strolling in the midst of these lilies, which perfume the earth and heaven. And he delights even more in being surrounded by these lilies, because he, being the first noble lily and the model, he is the specimen of all the others. Oh, how beautiful it is to see a virgin soul! Her heart gives off no other breath but that of purity and of candor. It is not even shaded by another love which is not God, and even her body gives off fragrance of purity. Everything is pure in her steps, pure in her operating, in speaking, in looking, and also in moving. So at the mere sight of her one feels the fragrance and recognizes a soul who is truly pure. What charisms, what graces, what mutual love and loving stratagems between this soul and her spouse Jesus! Only one who experiences them can say something. One cannot even narrate everything, and I don't feel it is my duty to speak about this. Therefore I keep silent, and I move on. December 21st, 1903, Volume 6. Effects of the Sorrows of the Celestial Mamma. The glory she enjoys in heaven. This morning I found myself outside of myself, and looking into the vault of the heavens I saw 7 most refulgent suns, but their shape was different from the sun which we see. It started with the shape of a cross, and it ended with a point, and this point was inside a heart. At first it could not be seen clearly, because the light of these suns was so great as to not allow one to see who was inside. But the nearer I drew, the more clearly it appeared that the Queen Mamma was inside. In my interior I kept saying, how I would like to ask her whether she wants me to try to go out of this state without waiting for the priest. In the meantime I found myself near her, and I told her, and she answered a curt no. I was left mortified by this answer, and the Most Holy Virgin turned to a multitude of people who surrounded her and said to them, "Listen to what she wants to do." And everyone said, "No, no." Then, drawing near me, all goodness, she told me, "My daughter, courage along the way of sorrow. See, these 7 suns which come out from within my heart are my 7 sorrows, which produced much glory and splendor for me. These suns, the fruits of my sorrows, dart continuously through the throne of the Most Holy Trinity, which, feeling wounded, sends me 7 channels of grace continuously, making me their owner. And I dispense them for the glory of all heaven, for the relief of purging souls, and for the benefit of pilgrim souls." While saying this, she disappeared, and I found myself inside myself. December 21st, 1911, Volume 10. The Divine Will is Son, and one who lives in the Divine Will becomes Son. As I was in my usual state, Blessed Jesus came for a little while, and placing himself in front of me, he looked at me all over. Those gazes penetrated me inside and out, and I became all light. And the more he looked at me, the more I sparkled, and through this light he looked at the whole world. Then, after fixing on me thoroughly, he told me, "My daughter, my will is Son, and one who lives in my volition becomes Son. And only through this Son do I look at the world and pour graces and benefits for the good of all. If there wasn't this Son of my will in a few souls, the earth would become foreign to me, and I would sever any communication between the earth and heaven. So the soul who does my will perfectly is like sun in the world, with this difference, that the material sun does good, giving light and material good, while the sun of my will in the soul impetrates both spiritual and temporal graces, and gives light to the souls. My daughter, let my will be that which you cherish the most. May my will be your life, your all, even in the holiest things, and even in my very privation. You certainly will not give me this sorrow of moving away from my will, even just for a little, will you?" I remained enchanted, and he disappeared. And I am thinking to myself, what do these words of Jesus mean? Oh, maybe he wants to do something big to me, that is, to deprive me of him. Ah, may his most holy will be always blessed and adored. December 21st, 1914, Volume 11. Just as the humanity of Jesus placed itself between the creatures with their sins and the Father, so does Luisa, being identified with Jesus. I was in my usual state, and blessed Jesus, coming all afflicted, told me, My daughter, I can't take the world any more. Relieve me for all. Let me palpitate in your heart, so that in hearing the heartbeats of all through the heartbeats of your heart, sins may not come to me directly, but indirectly through your heart. Otherwise my justice will send chastisements never seen before. In the act of saying this, he identified his heart with mine, making me feel his heartbeat. Who can tell all that I feel in it? Sins like flashes wounded that heart, and as I shared in it, Jesus felt relieved. Then, as I felt completely identified with him, it seemed as if I was enclosing his intelligence, his hands, his feet, and all the rest. And I shared in all the offenses of creatures against each one of the senses. But who can tell how this happened? Then Jesus added, "To have company in my pains is the greatest relief for me." This is why my Divine Father was not so inexorable after my incarnation, but milder. He no longer received direct offenses, but indirect ones, that is, through my humanity, which was a continuous shield for him. In the same way, I keep searching for souls who may place themselves between me and the creatures. Otherwise, I will make of the world a heap of ruins. December 21st, 1922, Volume 15. Privation of Jesus and Pains of the Soul. I felt all afflicted because of the privation of my adorable Jesus. Or rather, I felt tortured. My poor heart agonized and struggled between life and death. And while it seemed to be dying, a mysterious force made it rise again to continue its most bitter agony. O privation of my Jesus, how ruthless and how cruel you are! Even death would be an absolute nothing compared to you. After all, death does nothing other than bring one to eternal life, while the privation of Jesus makes life itself run away. But all this was nothing yet. My poor soul, wanting my life, my all, left my body in order to find him, at least outside of myself, but in vain. Rather, I found myself within an immensity whose depth, magnitude, and height seemed to have no limit. I fixed my gaze everywhere within that great empty space. Who knows, I might see him at least from afar, so as to take flight and throw myself into his arms. But it was all in vain. I feared I might fall into that great empty space. And without Jesus, where would I end up? What would happen to me? I trembled, I shouted, I cried, but no one had pity. I would have wanted to go back into my body, but a mysterious force prevented me from doing so. My state was horrible because my soul, being outside of myself, flung herself toward her God as though toward her center, faster than a stone that falls back again toward the center of the earth after it has been thrown up high. It is not the stone's nature to remain suspended, but it seeks the earth as support and rest. In the same way, it is not the soul's nature to go out of herself and not to fling herself into the center from which she came. This pain strikes such freight, fears, and heartbreak that I could call it pain of hell. Poor souls without God, how can they go on? What pain must the loss of God be for them! Ah, my Jesus, do not allow anyone to lose you. Now, as I was in this state so painful, I found myself inside myself, and my sweet Jesus, stretching out one arm, surrounded my neck. Then he made himself seen holding a little girl in his arms, but of extreme littleness. The little girl was agonizing, and as she seemed to be dying, Jesus now breathed on her, now gave her a little sip, now squeezed her to his heart, and the tiny little one would return to her agony again, but she would neither die nor come out of that mortal state. However, Jesus was all attention. He watched over her, assisted her, sustained her. He would miss not one movement of this dying little girl. I felt all the pains of that poor little one as though reverberating in the depth of my heart. And Jesus, looking at me, told me, "My daughter, this tiny little girl is your soul. Do you see how much I love you? With how much care I assist you? I keep you alive with sips of my will. My volition makes you smaller. It makes you die and rise again. But do not fear. I will never leave you. My arms will always hold you tightly to my breast." December 21st, 1928, Volume 25, Sea of Love in the Excesses of Jesus. Example of the sea. The divine will, solar ray that brings the life of heaven. The divine will operating. Happiness of Jesus. The novena of Holy Christmas continues, and continuing to hear the 9 excesses of the Incarnation, my beloved Jesus drew me to himself and showed me how each excess of his love was a sea without boundaries. And in this sea gigantic waves rose, in which one could see all souls flowing, devoured by these flames. Just as the fish flow in the waters of the sea, and the waters of the sea form the life of the fish, the guide, the defense, the food, the bed, the palace of these fish, so much so that if they get out of the sea they can say, "Our life is ended, because we have gone out of our inheritance, the fatherland given to us by our Creator." In the same way, these gigantic waves of flames that rose from these seas of fire, by devouring the creatures, wanted to be the life, the guide, the defense, the food, the bed, the palace, the fatherland of creatures. But as they go out of the sea of love, all of a sudden they find death. And little baby Jesus cries, moans, prays, shouts, and sighs, for he wants no one to go out of these devouring flames of his, because he does not want to see anyone die. Oh, if the sea had reason, more than tender mother, it would sadly cry over its fish that are snatched away from its sea, because it feels a life that it possesses and preserves with so much love, being snatched away from itself. And with its waves it would hurl itself at those who dared to snatch away from it so many lives that it possesses, and that forms its richness, its glory. And if the sea does not cry, I cry, Jesus says, in seeing that while my love has devoured all creatures, ungrateful, They do not want to live life in my sea of love, but tearing themselves away from my flames, they exile themselves from my fatherland, losing the palace, the guide, the defense, the food, the bed, and even the life. How can I not cry? They came out of me. They were created by me, and were devoured by my flames of love that I had in incarnating myself for love of all creatures. As I hear the 9 excesses being narrated to me, the sea of my love swells, it boils, and forming huge waves, it roars so much that it would want to deafen everyone, that they might hear nothing but my moans of love, my cries of sorrow, my repeated sobs, saying, "Don't make me cry any more. Let us exchange the kiss of peace. Let us love each other, and we will all be happy, the Creator and the creature." Jesus kept silent, and at that moment I saw heaven opened, and a ray of light descend from above that, fixing itself upon me, illuminated those who were around me. And my always lovable Jesus resumed his speaking. "Daughter of my will, this solar ray that fixed itself upon you is my divine will, that brings you the life of heaven into your soul. How beautiful is this solar ray that not only illuminates you and brings you its life, but whoever draws near you and remains around feels the life of light, because like sun, it expands around and gives to those who surround you the warm kiss of light, of its breath, of its life. And I feel happy within you in seeing that my divine will diffuses and begins to beat its way. See, the seas of love that you saw are nothing other than my will operating. When my will wants to operate, the seas of my love swell, boil, form their gigantic waves that cry, moan, shout, pray, deafen. On the other hand, when my fiat does not want to operate, the sea of my love is calm. It only murmurs quietly, its course of joy and of happiness, inseparable from it, is continuous. Therefore you cannot comprehend the joy I experience, the happiness I feel, and the interest I take in illuminating, in offering my very word, my very heart, to one who occupies himself with making my divine will known. My interest is so great that I envelop him within myself, and I myself overflowing outside of him, I take the floor, and I myself speak about my will operating in my love. Do you think that it is your confessor that speaks, in these evenings in which he is speaking in public about the 9 excesses of my love? It is I who take his heart in my hands and make him speak. But while he was saying this, benediction was being given, and Jesus added, "Daughter, I bless you. Everything is happiness for me when it comes to doing an act of mine over one who possesses my divine will, because if I bless you, my blessing finds the space in which to place the goods and the effects that my blessing contains. If I love you, my love finds in my fiat, within you, the space in which to place itself and carry out its life of love. Therefore, each thing I do over you, in you, and with you, is a happiness that I feel, because I know that a divine will has the place for everything I want to give you, and the virtue of multiplying the goods I give you, because it is our all-doer, and it occupies itself with forming as many lives for as many acts as we do with the creature in whom it reigns. After this I was doing my round in the divine fiat, and was going again to the first times of creation, to unite myself to the acts done by our father Adam in the state of innocence, so as to unite myself with him and continue from where he left. And my beloved Jesus, moving in my interior, told me, "My daughter, in creating man, I gave a visible universe in which he was to move freely and see the works of his Creator, done with so much order and harmony, done for love of him, and in this void to also do his own works. And just as I gave a visible void, so I gave an invisible void, even more beautiful for his soul, in which man was to form his holy works, his sun, his heavens, his stars, and echoing his Creator, he was to fill this void with all his works. But since man descended from my divine will to live in his own, he lost the echo of his Creator, and the model with which to be able to copy our works. Therefore it can be said that in this void there is nothing other than the first steps of man. All the rest is empty. Yet it must be filled, and this is why I await with so much love those who live and must live in my will, who, feeling the power of our echo, and having our models present to them, will hasten to fill this invisible void that I gave with so much love in creation. But do you know what this void is? It is our will. Just as I gave a heaven, a sun, to man's nature, so I gave the heaven, the sun of my fiat, to his soul. And when I see you take your steps after the steps of Adam innocent, I say, finally, here is the void of my divine will that begins to receive the first conquests and the first works of the creature. Therefore be attentive and continue always your flight in my divine volition. December 21st, 1930, Volume 28. Triumphs on the part of the divine will when the creature lets herself be worked by the divine fiat. Exchanges of triumphs on both sides. My flight in the divine volition continues. It seems to me that I call it, because life would be missing in me without it. The life of good, the life of love, the life of the light, the life of peace would be missing in me. And my human will, seeing itself alone, would assault me and would give life to my passions in me. This is why I fear so much that even for just one instant it may remain without the fiat operating in me, because it being present, my will remains crouched down and does not dare to move before a will so holy and so powerful. Therefore I call it, and it gives me its hand to take me into its acts, that I might follow it and keep it company. And since it created everything for love of creatures, when it feels her close and identified, it takes such delight that it feels as though repaid for the many things it issued from its creative hands. So while I was following the acts of the divine will done in creation, my sweet Jesus, making himself seen and looking at me, told me, "My daughter, how sweet it is for me to look at a soul who lets herself be worked by my divine will. A triumph takes place from one side to the other. My will invests the intelligence of the creature, and she lets herself be invested. In sum, they form an accord on both sides. And then when my will forms its triumph over each thought of the creature, and she acquires and makes a triumph of the many divine thoughts within her mind, so my divine will triumphs by giving and taking possession of it. The soul triumphs by wanting it and receiving it. So if she looks, if she speaks, if she palpitates, if she operates and walks, those are all triumphs of my will over the creature, and she triumphs and takes possession of many divine acts. Amid these exchanges of triumphs and possessions, such joy and happiness is formed on both sides that you cannot comprehend them all. In fact, you must know that when good, the triumph, the possession, is done between two, then does it bring joy and happiness. Isolated good has made no one happy. As it sees itself alone, it loses all the beauty of happiness. Therefore, my divine will keeps searching for its creature, in order to form its triumphs, to be able to form together with her its joys, its happinesses on the face of the earth. December 21st, 1931, Volume 30, How a Continued Act is like Judge, Order, and Sentry of the Creature. Who the Depositories of Jesus Are. Divine Fields and Seas. My abandonment in the divine fiat continues. Its power imposes itself upon me, and wants me to recognize it in each act of mine as life of my act, to be able to extend with its power the new heavens of beauty, of love, to be able to recognize in my act its own act, that does not know how to do small things, but great, that must arouse the amazement of the whole of heaven and be capable of competing with all its works. But if I do not recognize it, my act is not fit for receiving the power of the act of the divine will, and my act remains act of creature, and its power remains aside. O divine will, let it be that I may always recognize you, to be able to enclose in my act your potentiality, operating and glorifying of the works of your adorable will. Then, while I was thinking of this, my beloved Jesus made his short little visit to my poor soul and told me, "My daughter, to recognize what my will can do in the act of the creature forms the divine act in her. And in this act, as its foundation, my will places the divine beginning. And as it keeps forming, it invests it with its immutability in such a way that the creature will feel in her act a divine beginning that never shows any sign of ending, and an immutability that never changes. She will hear within herself the ringing of the little bell of her continued act that does its continuous course. This is the sign that the soul has received the divine beginning into her acts, the continuation, a prolicious act, says God dwelling in her and in her acts. It says confirmation of the good, because the value, the grace, the power of a continued act is so great that it fills the little voids of intensity of love, the little weaknesses to which the human nature is subject. It can be said that a continued act or virtue is like the judge, the order, the sentry of the creature. This is why I care so much that your acts be continuous, because there is something of my own inside of them, and I would feel my act dishonored in yours. See, my daughter, My ardor of love is so great that I want everything I have done for love of creatures to be recognized, but this for nothing else than to give. I feel a restlessness for giving. I want to form the depositories of my life, of my works, of my pains, of my tears, of everything. But these do not depart from me if they are not recognized. By not recognizing them, they prevent my step from drawing near to place in them what, with so much love, I want to give. And besides, they would remain without the effects. They would be like many blind who cannot see what is around them. On the other hand, the recognizing is sight for the soul, that makes the desire and the love arise, and therefore the gratitude toward I, who so much want to give. And they jealously keep my treasure deposited in them, and in the circumstances they make use of my life as guide, of my works in order to confirm their works, of my pains as support of their pains, and of my tears in order to wash themselves if they are stained. And oh, how happy I am that they make use of me and of my works in order to help themselves. This was my purpose for coming upon earth, to remain like a little brother in their midst, and inside of them as help in their needs. As they recognize me, I do nothing other than reflect myself in them in order to seal the good that they have known, almost like sun that, by reflecting its light over plants and flowers, communicates the substance of the sweetness and of the colors, not just apparent, but in reality. So if you want to receive much, seek to know what my will did and does in creation, and what it did in redemption, and I will be generous with you, and will deny you nothing of what I make you know. Even more, know that if I do not stop yet acting as your teacher, to make known to you many other things that belong to me, it is because I want to keep giving you what I make you know. I would not remain content if I did not have something to give, and always new things to give to my daughter. Therefore I anxiously wait for you to set in place in your soul what you have known, that you may retain it as your own thing. And while you set it in place, in order to help you set it, I keep caressing you, molding you, strengthening you. I expand your capacity. In sum, I renew what I did in the creation of the first creature. More so since, those being my own things that you have known and that I want to deposit in you, I do not want to trust anyone, not even yourself. I, myself, with my own creative hands, want to prepare the place and deposit them in you. And in order to keep them safe, I surround them with my love, with my strength, and with my light as guard. Therefore be attentive, let nothing escape you, and in this way you will give me the field to be able to give you the most beautiful surprises. After this, my little intelligence continued to cross the interminable sea of the divine will, and my highest good, Jesus, added, "My daughter, we have interminable divine fields and seas. These are filled with joys, with beatitude, with enchanting beauties of every kind, and possess the virtue of making arise ever new joys and beauties, such that none of them is like another. However, in these divine seas and fields of ours, as much as there are innumerable things and beatitudes, we have no lives that palpitate. And while we are life and heartbeat of everything, also of our joys, We miss the heartbeat of the creature that would palpitate in our own and, as life, fill these interminable fields and seas of ours. Now, do you want to know who brings to us her life? Not a new thing, we have so many of them. It is one who comes to live in our will. In fact, our will, overflowing from us, forms for us our divine fields and seas, filled with all possible and imaginable happinesses. And the creature comes into them as life, and we have the great contentment and the great glory that a life of ours can give us. And even though this life has come out of us, she is yet free to stay or not stay in our divine fields, and she loses, she sacrifices her human freedom, and in our will she takes the divine freedom, and as life she lives in our fields and seas without boundaries. And oh, how beautiful it is to see this life making her way through the thick crowds of our happinesses and joys, and casting in them her seed, her grain of wheat, image of her will that forms its ear so high, but as the reality, and not just apparent, of the palpitating and operating life in our celestial field. Or like a little fish, also symbol of her will that has life, palpitates, swims in our sea, lives and nourishes itself, amuses itself, plays 1,000 waterworks and amuses its creator, not as joy, but as life. There is a great difference between what our joys can give us and what a life can give us. This is why we can say, our fields are deserted, our seas are without fish, because the life of the creatures with which to fill them, so as to be able to give and receive life for life, is missing. But the time will come when they will be full, and we will have the full contentment and the great glory that, in the midst of our manifold joys, there will be a multitude of lives that will live inside of these fields, and will give us life for life. Now you must know that these, our fields and seas, are at the disposal of those who live on earth and who want to live life in our divine will, not for those who live in heaven, because those cannot add a single comma to what they have done. These are the enjoying lives in our divine fields, not the operating lives. It can be said of them, what is done is done. But it is the operating and conquering lives from the earth that we long for, and for them to enter, while being on earth, into these fields of ours, and operate and act as conquerors in a divine manner. More so since, from the moment man sinned, he went out from inside our will, and with justice the doors of these fields of ours were closed to him. Now we want to open these, our doors, after so many centuries, to whoever wants to enter, not forcing them, but freely, to let us populate these divine fields of ours, so as to give a new form, a completely new way of life to the creature, and be able to receive from her, not works, but life in each of her acts, life formed in our own life. Here, then, the reason for my so much speaking about my will. The power of my creative word will dispose them, will give them the desire, will change the human will. And knowing that I want to open the doors, they will knock. And immediately I will open to them, so that I myself may be satisfied, and I may have my fortunate people that will give me, in return for my life that I gave for them, their life in exchange for mine. Never have I spoken without getting anything, or in vain. I spoke in creation, and my word served to form the admirable things of the whole universe. I spoke in redemption, and my word, my gospel, serves as guide to my church, as light, as support. It can be said that my word is the substance and the life palpitating in the womb of my church. Now, if I have spoken, and I still speak about my divine will, it will not be in vain. No, but I will have the admirable effects and the life of my will known, operating, and palpitating in the midst of creatures. Therefore let me do, and I will dispose things in a way that my word will not be a dead word, but alive, that will give life with all its admirable effects. More so, since these celestial fields and seas of ours will act as mothers to the fortunate souls who would want to live in them. They will educate them in a divine manner. They will nourish them with delicious foods taken from the celestial table, and will raise them in a noble and holy way, such that in all their acts, steps, and words it will appear, written in clear notes, they are similar to their Creator. God will hear the melody of His voice in their word, His power in their works, the sweet motion of His steps that runs after everyone, for He wants them with Himself in their steps. And as though enraptured, He will say, "Who is it that is like me? Who can imitate my sweet, harmonious, powerful voice as to be able to shake heaven and earth? Who possesses such strength as to capture me into her works, to make me operate together with her? Who is it? Who is it? Ah, it is one who lives in our divine fields. It is right that she be like us in everything, as much as it is possible for the creature. She is our daughter, and that's enough. Let us allow her to imitate us, to be like us. She will be our glory of our creative work, the longed-for one of her celestial Father. These souls will form the new hierarchy of the celestial fatherland, where there is a place reserved for them that to no one else is it given to occupy. December 21st, 1932, Volume 31, Exchange of Gifts of Will Between God and the Soul. Continuous rebirth in the divine life, wedding bond, feast of everyone. How the divine will holds the creature besieged. I feel like a little baby in the arms of the divine will. Oh, how true it seems to me that I am the little newborn, that while I am about to be born, another of its acts of divine will pours itself over me, or even another knowledge of His is manifested to me. I am reborn again in that act, and in that knowledge as a new life in His divine will that I did not have in my power before. I didn't even know it, and in the act of receiving it, I feel myself reborn again. But while I am about to be reborn, He gives me another of His acts. He invests me with another knowledge of His, and I am always in the act of being reborn. O power of the supreme Fiat, you don't know how to ever leave the creature. On the contrary, it seems to me that you place me in the labyrinth of your immense light, in the act of always giving me new life, and I feel the need to receive from you your continuous life, to remain lost in you, but happy lost, because one is not lost, but conquered by new divine life that it makes in the creature. But while my mind was lost in the divine fiat, my celestial teacher, visiting his little newborn, all goodness, told me, "My little daughter, my love is so much that I always remain in the act of making the gift of my will in all the acts that the creature does, in order to receive the gift of hers. I am the first to surrender the gift of mine to her. I spy to see when the creature is about to do an act, in order to give her the gift of my will in her act, so that in seeing the great gift that I made her, she gives me the little gift of her volition. Now with this gift of mine, of my volition, that I go giving in all the acts of the creature, she receives a new act of divine life, and I make her reborn in that new act that I give her, and she feels the new divine life that she acquires. And while she is about to form herself in that divine life, I do not wait, but immediately I make her new gift of my volition, and so the life of the creature alternates with the giving of my gift and with wanting to receive hers, so that she feels in herself the continuous growth and rebirth of her life in the divine. Now so great is this gift that I make, that while I am about to do it, the heavens are amazed and reverently abase themselves in order to adore a gift so great, and they magnify their Creator for so much liberality, and in everything puts itself at attention in order to be spectators of how this gift develops in the act of the creature. And when they see the new birth that she makes in divine life, they tremble in seeing the great portent that she is reborn to new divine life for as many times as this gift of my will is given to her. And oh, how they thank me for so much goodness of mine, because everyone feels happier in seeing this gift of my volition operating in the act of the creature. One can say that in this exchange of will, in these reciprocal gifts of both parties, a wedding between the soul and God takes place, an always new, repeated wedding. And when there is a wedding, everyone celebrates the new spouses, and they extol their Creator, because with this gift of my fiat, it is not only the gift that I make, but together with the gift, I give my life that forms the bond of inseparability, in which the substance of the true wedding between the human and divine exists. And oh, the greatest ingratitude of one who does not receive the gift of my volition in their act, especially in seeing my solicitudes that I want to give it. I pray and I supplicate that they receive it. And many times, by my industry, new unexpected incidents and circumstances are procured, in order to have new occasions to be able to give them more often the gift of my fiat. And when I see that they do not accept it, I feel my industries of love changed into sorrow, and I could say that the heavens cry together with me, because when this gift of my will acts in the act of the creature, the heavens are comprised together with it, and they feel everything, either the feast, if it is accepted, or the sorrow, if it is rejected. Therefore be attentive. I want nothing other than that the exchange be continuous, that you take the gift of my will and give me yours in your little acts, in everything that you do. If you pray, if you suffer, if you work, in everything. Oh, how happy you will make me! I will be all eyes over your act, so that it has all the requirements of an act worthy of my divine will. So I felt myself completely invested by divine volition. I felt it beating in my little soul. Its celestial and balsamic air formed heaven in me. And I felt happiness of up there. Rather, I felt happier than the celestial citizens, because they do not have a gift of an act of divine will as it is conquering, as it is reborn in God. Rather, they have the gift of it only so as to be happy and beatified. But as conquering? No. I instead can make new conquests, and I can enclose in my act an operating divine will. But while my mind blundered, sweet Jesus, surprising me, added, "Blessed daughter, I want to tell you the reason why I want that the creature receives the gift of my will in all her acts, and time after time she gives me hers. Because if there is this exchange for us for one act, and for another there isn't, in the act where there isn't the exchange, a void forms in the soul, and this void becomes filled with miseries, with weakness, with passions. With this the divine life remains broken and as detached in her. Therefore the true rebirths cannot happen, because she would lack the nourishment, the prime material of the continuous act of my fiat that forms these new rebirths in God. Even more, since only it possesses and forms the continuous act. So without its conquering act, it is impossible to receive such great gifts and goods as to amaze heaven and earth." So in hearing this, I said, "Tell me, my love, why do you take such interest, that you want the will of the creature and you want to give yours?" And Jesus, "Do you want to know why? Because by taking her will I place the creature in safety, and by giving her mine I take from her from all sides, and I put my life in safety in her. And since there is no thing or person who does not have bonds of dominion and of conservation with my divine will, I feel the fortunate creature together with me in everyone and everything. And then I can say with deeds, not with words, what is mine is yours, and I have done everything for you. With this my purpose is realized. My work created with so much love, that is the creature, doesn't trouble me any more, nor is there any more danger, because my divine will holds her besieged in its infinite confines, so that nothing else remains than enjoying each other and making each other happy, with a happiness that is never interrupted on either part. This is why that, when I do not see the creature gifted with the gift of my fiat, I do not give myself peace. I am continuously on watch, because I know that her volition can betray her and me. Therefore I must use stratagems, loving industries. I must always work, for there is no rest for me. On the other hand, when her volition is in my power and mine is in her power, I rest over her destiny. There is no more danger, and if I want the continuous exchange between myself and her, it is to have the occasion of having something to do and to say, to remain in sweet conversation. And since I want to always give her of mine, I use the pretext of wanting the exchange of hers, in order to give her my will again. But hers was already mine, and mine was already hers. Only by giving it again, I add new divine life and more surprising graces. Therefore I want you always in my volition, so we can be secure, you by always being with me, and I with you." December 21st, 1937, Volume 35. How the Kingdom of the Divine Will on Earth has been decreed in the consistory of the Adorable Trinity. The new breath of God by which the creature will be restored. My poor mind was occupied by the great wonders and prodigies that the divine volition can do when it reigns in the creature. And I was thinking to myself, what a happy destiny to live in it. There cannot be a greater fortune, either in heaven or on earth. But how can it ever come to reign on earth if evils and sins abound so much as to be horrifying? Only a divine power with one of its greatest prodigies could do it. Otherwise the kingdom of the divine will be in heaven, but not on earth. And as I was thinking this, my sweet Jesus, my sweet life, visiting my poor soul with unspeakable goodness, told me, "My good daughter, it has been decreed in the consistory of the most holy Trinity that my divine will have its kingdom on earth. As many prodigies as this will take, so many we will do. We will not hold back anything in order to have what we want, but in operating, we always use the most simple, though powerful ways to overwhelm heaven and earth and all the creatures in the act we want. You must know that in the creation it took nothing other than our omnipotent breath to infuse life into man. But how many prodigies in that breath! We created the soul, providing it with the three powers, true image of our adorable Trinity. With the soul he had the heartbeat, the breathing, the circulation of the blood, the motion, the warmth, the speech, the sight. What did it take to make all these prodigies in man? The simplest of our acts, armed with our power, our breath, and the running of our love, which, unable to contain it any longer, ran toward him, even to the point of making him the greatest prodigy of the entire work of creation. Now, my daughter, since man did not live in our divine will, his three powers have been obscured, and our adorable image remained deformed in him in such a way that he has lost the first heartbeat of God's love within his heartbeat, and the divine breathing within his human breathing. Or better, he hasn't really lost it. He just does not feel it. He doesn't feel the circulation of the divine life, the motion of good, the heat of the supreme love, the word of God in his own, the sight to be able to look at his Creator. All has remained obscured, weakened, maybe even deformed. What does it take to restore this man? We will return again to breathe on him with stronger and growing love. We will breathe in the depth of his soul. We will blow more strongly into the center of his rebellious will, but so strongly as to shake the evils by which he is trapped. His passions will remain floored and terrified before the power of our breath. They will feel burning by our divine fire. The human will feel the palpitating life of its Creator, and it will hide him like a veil, so that man will return to be the bearer of his Creator. Oh, how happy he will feel! We will restore him and heal him with our breath. We will be like a most tender mother who has a crippled child, and by breathing, whispering, and blowing, she pours herself on her child, and only then she will stop blowing on him, when she will have healed him and made him beautiful like she wanted him to be. The power of our breath will not leave him. We will stop breathing on him only when we see him coming back into our paternal arms. We want him beautiful like us. Only then will we feel that our child has recognized our paternal goodness and how much we love him. See, then, what it takes to make our will come and reign upon earth, the power of our omnipotent breath. With it we will renew our life within him. All the truths I manifested to you, the great prodigies of living in my will, will be the most beautiful and the greatest properties that I will give to him as a gift. This, too, is a certain sign that its reign will come upon earth, because if I speak, first I make facts, and then I speak. My word is the confirmation of this gift, of the prodigies I want to do. Why would I expose my divine properties and make them known if its kingdom didn't have to come upon earth? Now I will continue on the same topic of the date December 18th, about how our acts done in the divine will turn into life. I was thinking to myself, in the divine order, what will become of the many good works that did not come out from the divine volition, and so cannot be life, the seed of its life being missing? My sweet Jesus, always kind, said, "My daughter, it's no surprise that each act of the creature, even a little I love you done in my will and possessing by nature its creative life, is matured in the center of its divine life, and naturally reacquires life. All that is done in my will is regenerated in our eternal love, and acquires the long generation of many divine lives that are exclusively ours. Now, good works not done in our will can be like many beautiful ornaments within our creative works. Some may be more beautiful than others, but never life. Even in the order of creation, there are lives and there are ornaments. Flowers are not lives, but they still form a beautiful ornament to the earth, though not a permanent one. Fruits are not lives, but they serve to feed man and to make him taste many various sweetnesses, though they are not durable and man can't always taste them any time he wants. If fruits and flowers were lives, man could enjoy them any time he wanted. The sun, the sky, the stars, the wind, and the sea are not lives, but, being our works, how much good do they not do? They serve as the most beautiful and primary residence for man. What are their houses compared to the great residence we made of all the universe? There is a blue vault dotted with gold that never fades. There is a sun that is never extinguished. There is air that, being breathed, gives life. There is a wind that purifies and refreshes, and many more things. It was necessary for our love to make a mix of works and lives, because they had to serve to delight man, and they had to serve for decorum, decency, and residence of the one we created with so much love. So since we had made more than sufficient works, he was to enjoy our works and to live in our divine will, in order to form many lives of love and glory for the one who loved him so much. But the difference between works and life is great. Life does not perish, while works are subject to many changes. And if they are not right and holy, instead of forming our ornament, they form our dishonor and their own confusion, maybe even their condemnation. End of December 21st. Fiat.